Hopefully everyone has been able to complete this warm-up. If not, then try your best to follow along and check and see if your solution matches up and where you made your error. So recall the steps to solving a multi-step equation. Recall we need to simplify each side separately before we can use inverse operations to move anything to the other side. So the way that I attack this is, remember, we're going to need to eliminate parentheses by using the distributive property. So I'm going to look for that, and I'm going to use my handy dandy highlighter to highlight where I'm going to need to complete that. So also watch your signs, my friends. You guys have got to watch your signs. That's always the same mistake all of you guys make. I don't know, highlight it, circle it, flag it, do whatever it is that you guys got to do to make sure that you watch those signs. All right. So those are my two parts I'm going to have to apply the distributive property. So I'm going to start with the yellow, and I'm going to choose my red pen. I'm going to draw my fence. I know you guys are all about that, huh? Okay. So let's start over on this side. So I'm going to distribute this -4 to n, and then -4 to -1, and I'm going to multiply. So -4 times positive n, that's going to give me -4n. -4 times -1, that's a positive 4, because remember, a negative times a negative gives me a positive. Next, I'm going to use distributive property on the other side, but just make sure you guys are careful that you guys are not getting lost in, the notation. Now, this is that gets you every time. That negative on the outside, that is actually I call it like that tricky -1, right? That negative, that's the same thing as times -1. So now I'm going to multiply -1 times n, and then -1 times 9. Essentially, you're just changing the sign. So that's going to give me -n or -1n. And then a negative times a positive is going to give me a -9. So now I have released myself from all the parentheses, and I'm just going to bring down the remaining parts of my equation that I did not work with. So I can see this -9n right here needs to be brought down, and this -9n on the other side needs to be brought down. So now I have eliminated those. So the next thing I'm going to need to do is I'm going to have to use my CLT, combine like terms. And combine like terms means you're working on one side at a time. You are not going to move anything across that equal sign. So I'm going to identify my like terms. So I have a -9n and a -4n. And we're combining them, so we're going to add. Recall -9 and -4, same sign. You add them up, right? So it's going to give you 13. And keep it negative. It's like, I owe you 9 and I owe you 4. Now you better pay up. You owe me $13. So that's going to be a -13n. And then bring down 4 plus 4. Drop it down. Drop that equal sign down. Here I have a -1 and a -9. Same situation. You owe me $1, and then you also owe me another $9. So now you owe me 10. So that's going to be -10n. And then bring down that -9. So now the next step is I'm going to want to move all my variables to one side and then move all my constants to the other side. The order that you choose to do that does not matter. It's basically a chess move. You want to just use whatever is the best strategy. So I'm going to look at this, and I know somehow I'm going to end up maybe moving that -9 to the other side. So then that's going to be gone. And then I'll add that 13. So you know what? I'll go ahead and I will add 13n to both sides first. And there's other ways you can do this as well. But that's the choice I made. Now that eliminates. I'm going to bring down that 4. -10 plus +13, right? I have $13 and I pay you 10. So now I have only $3 left in my pocket. bring down that negative 9. So now I need to make sure that I move all my numbers to the other side. So I want to move this negative 4 by using addition, plus 9. That cancels, and that gives me 13. So 13 equals 3n. Now I'm going to divide both sides by 3. And I'm going to get n equals, so 13 divided by 3. So here's a little calculator fun. I'm old school, so I like to use my old school long division. You guys can just throw it into a calculator. I know 3 times 4 gives me 12. 3 times 4 gives me 12. Subtract that, I get 1. I can't, 3 doesn't go into 1, so I'm going to go ahead and put a 0 there. 3 goes into 10 3 times, and that's going to give me 9. That's going to give me 1. So that's going to end up being 4.33 repeating. And it's going to be positive 4.33 repeating. And that's my final answer. That. Oh. Let's begin example 1. We are going to solve this 2-step linear inequality for n, and then we are going to graph its solution set on the number line. So I'm going to have to solve for that n. So I'm going to do my work over on this side so that I don't end up crashing with the number line. So I have 8 plus n divided by 2 is greater than 2. So recall, whenever solving a 2-step equation, you can use you can manipulate an inequality using the same steps. The first step is you're going to want to undo addition or subtraction first. Then you're going to want to undo multiplication or division second. So in order for me to do that, I'm going to want to move 8 to the other side. Recall, we're going to move the numbers that are on the same side as the variable. So since this 8 is positive, I'm going to move it to the other side by using subtraction. So 8 minus 8 gives me 0. That cancels. Now I'm just going to bring down this n divided by 2. Okay, I'm just going to bring it down. Also bring down that inequality symbol. Don't flip it. Yep. 2 minus 8, that's going to give me negative 6. So I've done that first step. Now I'm going to have to multiply or divide by the number that's on the same side as n. And recall, this is n divided by 2. So the opposite of division is multiplication. So I'm going to multiply both sides by 2. So recall, anything divided by itself is just 1. I'm going to bring that n over, and I'm going to get n is greater than negative 12. Now, I did not need to flip the inequality symbol because recall, the rule tells us that we only flip it if we multiplied or divide by a negative number. Well, we multiplied by positive 2, so it was not necessary. Now I'm going to need to go over to my number line and plot the solution set. It's important that you guys actually realize what you're actually going to be plotting here. The solution is going to be basically it's going to be numbers that are all larger than negative 12. But it doesn't say that it is equal to negative 12, right? So negative 12 is not included, so it has to be values that are larger than negative 12. So numbers that would be larger than negative 12 would be negative 11, negative 10, negative 9, negative 8, and so forth. Recall that the smaller the negative number is, it's actually larger because it's closer to 0. So I'm going to go ahead and locate my 12. And recall that since it's n is greater than, we don't have an equal sign underneath that. And negative 12 is not included in the solution set, so I'm going to use an open circle. Then I'm going to go ahead and I am going to shade that part. Some students, when I was in college, I used to shade the whole like number line, but I see a lot now they actually just go ahead and they draw a line, an arrow that represents the solution set. And because I have an arrow on it, it means that it's going to be values that are all greater, and that's many different values. And that's how we solve our very first example of a linear inequality. Now let's go ahead and move on to the next example. All right, here we have a fraction. Those are my favorite. So here I have the quantity n minus 9 divided by 22 is greater than or equal to negative 1. So again, I'm going to rewrite this over on this side so I have more room. X minus 9 divided by 22 is greater than or equal to negative 1. So it's funny, these look like challenging problems, but actually they're pretty easy. Now, anytime I see an actual quantity where I have an expression, so x minus 9, right? Remember before I just had x, I didn't have an x minus 9 or an x plus 9. So for myself, I'm going to go ahead and put those in parentheses so that I treat it as one unit for now. So with this problem, the very first thing I'm going to want to undo is this division, which is interesting, right? So I want to move that 22 to the other side by using multiplication, because the inverse operation of multiplication is division. And anything divided by itself is going to give me 1. And I'm going to bring down what's left over on the top. So I'm going to bring down that x minus 9. Then I'm going to bring down that inequality symbol. And then negative 1 times positive 22 is going to give me negative 22. So now I've moved that 22 to the other side. So remember, I'm going to need to isolate that x. So I'm going to add 9 to both sides. That eliminates. Bring down this x. Bring down the inequality symbol. And negative 22 plus 9, recall we have different signs, so I'm going to need to subtract, right? And you're going to take the sign of the bigger number. So here I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to get negative 13, right? Oops, sorry guys. Then I'm going to go over to my number line and I'm going to plot that negative 13. So I'm going to find, where's my negative 13? So negative 16, and be careful because look at this number line. It looks like it's going, let's see, negative 18, right? 17, negative 16, negative 15, negative 14, negative 13. Just be a little careful so you can check out the increments. And since it has the solution set is x values must be all greater than or equal to negative 13, that means I'm going to have to use a closed circle. Because the solution set, it says all values have to be greater than or equal to negative 13, so that means negative 13 is included. And values that are bigger than negative 13 would be negative 12, negative 11, negative 10, negative 9, and it just keeps going to the right. So then I'm going to go ahead and draw my arrow going to the right. And that's my solution. Now let's check out our last example. This one is my favorite. It looks like so much fun, right, students? Wow, we got one that's fun here. That's all right. I'm never going to let math get me down. It's a fun challenge that I accept. So, let's take a look at this multi-step inequality. Well, we're going to solve this the same way that we would have an equation. So it's not too much different. So I am going to rewrite this over on this side. I have negative 98 is less than negative 3b minus 5 times the quantity 4 plus 2b, close parentheses. So if that inequality symbol is scaring you or giving you nightmares, almost pretend like it's an equal sign just for the moment when you're solving it. But pay attention to the rules as well. So remember, just like in the warm-up, our very first step is we're going to want to eliminate parentheses by using the distributive property. And I can see that I have negative 5 times the quantity 4 plus 2b. So I'm going to distribute that negative 5 to all the terms that are inside the parentheses. So I'm going to have negative 5 times 4 and then negative 5 times 2b. That is going to give me negative 20 minus 10b. Yay! So now I'm going to bring down the rest of the inequality that I haven't worked with. So this negative 3b is going to come down. I'm going to bring down this. Oh, sorry. I don't know what I was thinking. That is not. Why did I put that? I must really want that to be equal to. There we go. I'm going to bring down that negative 98. All right. Now, let's go ahead and simplify this side with the like terms, my CLT again. Here I have a negative 3b and a negative 10b. So when I combine those, I'm going to get a negative 13b. Now I can bring down the rest of, that's the problem that I did not work with. Also, I'm going to bring down that inequality symbol, and I'm going to bring down that negative 98. Okay, so now I'm going to want to, remember, same thing. I want to make sure that I have all my constants on one side and all my variables on the other. So I'm going to move this negative 20 by adding 20 to both sides. Now negative 98 and a positive 20, recall you're going to subtract, right? So then here you're going to get negative 78. Bring down that inequality symbol. Bring down that negative 13b. Now I'm going to divide both sides by negative 13. That eliminates. So now, watch out, look at what I just did. Sorry, my voice just cracked. I divided both sides by a negative. Remember, the rule told us that every time you multiply or divide by a negative, you got to flip it, flip it, flip it. You got to flip that sign, right? So now this inequality symbol is going to flip in the other direction. So now this is going to become, now you see how it's going to that direction. Now I'm going to go ahead and flip it in this direction. And a negative divided by a negative does give me a positive. So I'm going to divide 78 divided by 13. And that's going to give me positive 6, right? And that's my solution. So that means B is less than 6, or 6 is greater than B, right? But since we're thinking about the solutions for B, I know that my solution set is going to be all values that are less than 6. So I'm going to locate 6 on my number line, which is right here. And I know that it's going to be an open circle because 6 is not included. And values that are less than 6 are going to be to my left. Oops. And that's it. That is how you solve multi-step linear inequalities.